love that intro. I'm always
I know.
bopping back here. Hey, what's up, everyone? It is not your usual recap show. It is our Cheesehead TV live show, a day later than normal, which means Maggie and I have had a full 24 hours more to decide what we were going to talk about today. Still Packers bye week. I feel like I'm, like the Rams game was really the last game that we watched. But yeah, we've got kind of an NFC North and NFC playoff picture to talk about. It's starting to take shape. As we saw today, there's a way that the Packers could clinch both the division and a playoff spot this weekend, which I don't know how this season, went by so fast. And Bears game.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of strange that the Packers literally wrap up with 3 division opponents and then 2 AFC teams. Like, it's just kind of a weird, like, the Rams were probably their most, I was going to say playoff implicating game, but I don't really think that's, phrased correctly. But that probably had the biggest implications outside of the winning the division itself, now that they've gotten the Cardinals out of the way and the Rams. So yeah, just kind of a good wind down to the regular season, get them amped up and ready to go for the playoffs.
I know. So how you feeling? How you feeling now? We're at the bye week. We've had some time. How do you feel about this team?
I feel good, and I think I feel good because we're going to talk about kind of the rest of the NFC and the way that the playoff picture is shaping up. But there's a lot of these teams that have to beat up on each other, and the Packers kind of did their beating up already. And now they just get to kind of see what shapes up across the rest of the NFC, and even, some really good AFC, NFC interconference kind of games going on. So I don't know. I think if you would have asked me how I feel about this team 4 weeks into the season, I would have addressed a lot more concerns than I have in going into week 14 with the Bears on deck for Sunday Night Football, knowing that the Packers can clinch the division as early as week 14.
Yeah. I feel similarly. I feel like the Packers came out of some of the major matchups with wins. And so now we're looking ahead to the final 5 weeks. And I'm like, they could go 5-0. Like, I just wouldn't be really all that surprised. They kind of dropped their one division loss already to the Vikings. Don't foresee that happening at home again. Not to mention, the Vikings just lost to the Lions. So there's that. And yeah, look, if whatever happens with the Ravens or the Browns, it's not going to, the win-loss column might affect playoff seeding, but it's not going to be as big of a deal as the Rams or the Cardinals games were. So yeah, they put themselves in a really nice position.
Yeah, shout out to Matt Ramage for hanging out in the chat. Matt, it's good to see you. Some of our regular friends are in the chat as well. We've got Big B and Robin and Brandy. Wait, did you say we have friends?
Yeah.
I don't know, speaking for you, Perri, but I do have a few friends. I would like to think that I do.
Okay, so you want to start with playoff picture, or do you want to start with Bears?
Let's start with playoff picture, because there's some really, really good games this week. And I guess the rest of the season, honestly.
Go for it.
All right. So I think the game, I'm going to give you, there's 4 games that I'm going to be watching the most closely that aren't the Packers or the Vikings. And you have Bills at Buccaneers.
Yes.
It's a big one. Rams at Cardinals is a huge one. That's what I mean when I said NFC teams are going to beat up on each other. Cowboys at Washington is significant now that Washington is literally, kind of in the playoff conversation as a wild card. And then 49ers at Bengals to me is really interesting because the AFC North is such a cluster right now. And the 49ers are, again, one of those wildcard teams that needs to kind of stay in it, even if their division isn't probably attainable for them at this point. So some really, really good football coming down the stretch.
There is. The Ravens and Browns play each other again before both get to play the Packers. I was thinking about Cowboys Washington today because I don't think I've been impressed with the Cowboys since it's probably been a month.
Before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's been a month. I think whatever game they played prior to being absolutely beaten down by the Broncos, I don't think I've been impressed with them since that Broncos game. And Washington's they're sneaking in there. So I agree. Bills Bucks obviously I think has huge implications for both sides, and I think the Bills like sorely need a win. But then again, you think about going into Tampa Bay, and it's like, can anybody really beat Tom Brady at home anymore?
Well, and who knows the Bills better than Tom Brady? Like it's just
true. And yeah, I mean, Rams Cardinals I think has like everybody circled because who do the Packers root for in that scenario? The Rams?
Yeah, because they are, I mean, if the Cardinals drop one more and the Packers can win out, then they have the tiebreaker. So
then we're rooting for
Cardinals need one loss in this.
I feel like they must be sitting at home on their couches like yeah, okay. You do that. I did see today as well that the Packers-Bears game has the largest points spread of the entire weekend at 13. So Vegas loves the Packers in this game, as they should, right? The Bears cannot put together an offense to save their lives. But I did find that very interesting, just because I feel like, I don't know, a lot of Packers games like are always looked at as closer than they necessarily like should be lines-wise. So take the Packers, I guess, to cover.
Yeah, if you like to gamble.
Big win. Yeah, Maggie, there's some comments in here that you look very festive.
Thanks. I was telling everybody pre-show that I put these lights up for Packs What She Said Live. So, maybe I'll keep them for like the playoff run. We'll see.
But, I love it.
Then if something bad happens, I'm going to rip them down in like a really dramatic fashion.
Just like Nagler shaving his mustache. Big mad.
Yep. The big mad and sad.
Yeah. So those games, I agree. Someone has a comment in here that says we need to go 1-0, like Coach says. I also agree. I think that's a good mentality, is never thinking too far ahead. But it's hard at the end of the season to not be looking at some of these games thinking about, okay, that one loss could mean a 1 seed or a 2 seed, or a 2 seed or a 3 seed. So it's a big deal now. Every game has a lot more meaning.
Yeah, and I mean, even like looking long term, the Packers obviously have to play their 3 division opponents. They've got, like we said, the Browns and the Ravens. But there's a lot of NFC head-to-heads, primarily like interdivisional games, kind of the rest of the way. You've got Seahawks and Rams in week 15. I know the Seahawks have not really been the cream of the crop this season. Washington at the Eagles, Saints at Buccaneers. One I'm looking forward to in week 16 is the Colts at the Cardinals. I think that's going to be a really fun game. I like the Colts. But yeah, there's a lot. Week 17, the Cardinals at the Cowboys. So there's just a lot of like NFC top tier teams that have to face off against each other for some of these seedings, which, again, is nice that the Packers got some of those out of the way early and that they got wins when they did.
Yep. Yeah, I think when you looked at this going into the season, you thought, wow, really late bye. That's going to be really tough. But I think the way that they've battled through basically a full college football schedule to get to this bye has put them in a much better position than most other teams. Like you said, a lot of teams still have to go head to head. I don't know if they're tired or beat up. I think every team has lost, a key player at this point in the season. And the Packers are sitting pretty and just have their division left, which is like a joke. Every game's a game, but it's not like they're looking at, facing the entirety of like the NFC West, right? For the remainder of the season. It's not as difficult. I think I was listening somewhere where it's the Cardinals and the Packers who have the 2 easiest schedules over the remainder of the season, which I find interesting because the Cardinals still have to play the Rams, but it is like noted that the Packers do have one of the easiest schedules for
the Buccaneers have to be up there too, because they play the Jets and then they have the Panthers twice in their final 5 weeks. So they're going to keep, I think that's what makes all this so interesting is like, we've talked about whether or not trap games are a thing, but like that there's added motivation going into these final few weeks because they know that if the Packers do drop one, there's teams on their heels, just like, the Cardinals at this point have to feel the same way about dropping a game against some really good teams. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like, we say this every year, but it just feels like this is a really fun potential for the playoffs. There's a lot of new AFC teams in the mix.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like when there's new teams. Like, who would have thought that the Bengals would be in there, and the Chargers have with Justin Herbert is a lot of fun.
I love the Chargers.
I know you do.
I love the Chargers. I think they're so fun. That offense is going to be, I think they need like another year or two with Brandon Staley, but wow, it's going to be fun. And they have some players on defense, like players. So I think they're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're close, but I do
so
love
Staley. I have a question for you.
Okay.
If there is one team that would make you the most nervous about the Packers facing in the playoffs right now in the NFC, who is it?
It's the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And I'm sure recency bias is part of it, and their defense is getting pretty beat up, but their offense is really explosive. Tom Brady is Tom Brady. And, I was actually telling Mark a couple days ago that if for whatever reason the Bucs have a higher seed, I'm going to ask my mother-in-law, because her daughter lives in Tampa, to fly me down for for the Packers Buccaneers game. But I also don't know if I'd want to be there because that might break my heart a little bit. So
I think Jen, I don't think it's recency bias. I think we've watched the Packers beat both the Cardinals and the Rams. We've watched the Packers beat the Cardinals without Devontae Adams. So there's that. The Cowboys are too up and down right now. I think we've seen the Packers beat the Washington football team. The only team we haven't seen the Packers beat yet this season, because this season's different than last season, is the Buccaneers, which is also why I think that they would be the biggest challenge for me, just because there's nothing else to go off of. And they look really good despite, of course, losing like some major players on defense, who I think they're actually like in a similar position to the Packers, where they're poised to get some of those guys back at the end of this season. So both the Packers and the Bucs could be going into the playoffs with like some new juice.
And I think it's tough too. Like Matt LaFleur talked about this earlier in the week, where he just said, like, anytime you play a team twice, there's added stakes, right? Because, and this is what they're encountering with the Bears on Sunday, where you're thinking about not only what worked really well, but what didn't work. And it's like a chess game where the teams are trying to out game plan each other based on what they saw the first time around. So, there could be a lot of double ups and overlap in the playoffs if, the Packers do see the Cardinals, or if they see the Rams or Washington or the 49ers or the Vikings. There's a lot of teams in contention for the NFC playoffs that the Packers would be facing a second time. And if it, of course, was a team like the Vikings a third time, which statistically is tough to do.
But they already dropped one.
That's true. So they can win the next two.
That's fine. And I don't think that the Vikings are making the playoffs. I have to say, though, like I just think even if they do face some of the teams that they've already beaten, I like their chances still against them. I like the way this defense is playing, and I think the offense is just getting better every single week. And you're watching Matt like get into his bag with some of these play calls. It's fun. So I think that while yes, obviously there would need to be adjustments the last time. That's what good teams do, but you have to expect that Matt and the whole coaching staff would do the same on the Packers side.
Yeah. And I mean, I think just, the wrapping up, like the next 5 games, wrapping up the regular season, we've talked every week about what we want to see improve. And so far, the team really has done that, right? The defense is playing at an all-pro level. And you're talking about getting your all-pros back in Zadarius Smith and Jair Alexander at some point. The offense is starting to find rhythm, putting up 30-plus points in the last couple games. We've talked ad nauseum about MVS and what he means to the offense, taking some of the pressure off Devontae Adams. Special teams, looked better. I guess 3 out of 4 ain't bad as far as like progress, better than missing 3 or 4 in a row. So yeah, I mean, I think they're on a very nice trajectory as far as the team as a whole. And they always say like you want to operate efficiently in all 3 phases, and I think they're as close to doing that as they maybe have been all season.
Yes, you said it. All right, let's look at this weekend, because we actually have a Packers game to look at after the bye week. It was weird not being stressed out on a Sunday for about 3.5 hours. And I think that the Packers are going to beat the Bears to a pulp.
I agree.
Okay. I just look like it's time for Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace to go. It's been time for a couple of years now. As someone who just like enjoys the game, I actually like fear for Justin Fields' growth opportunities in that franchise if they stay, because he obviously has tons of talent, but like what they're not going to be able to develop him. And he's struggling, and he's gotten hurt this season because he's been struggling behind an abysmal offensive line. And that offense has barely been able to score like any points. So I don't know. I just don't see anything that the Bears do better than the Packers.
Well, and I mean, it's tough because, Mina Kimes made fun of me for this when I said that, you want your division to be competitive because you want your team to go up against some good talent. But I would like it if Justin Fields was a good quarterback. You and I have talked about the potential of having like Jordan Love and Justin Fields and like, I don't know, whoever the hell the Lions and the Vikings draft in the next couple of years. Like young quarterbacks in a division make things fun. You look at Justin Herbert and Pat Mahomes is a good example of that. Tua and Josh Allen could be another example of that. Joey Burrow and Lamar Jackson. I was going to put Baker in there, but I don't know if that really qualifies. But it's good for the game and it's good for your division to have those kinds of rivalries. And friend of the show, Jacob Westendorf, always says it can't be a rivalry if one team always wins. So I think that's kind of, and not to like, you look at Bears fans on Twitter and they're already saying it. They're like, oh, enjoy your blowout. Somebody asked me to come on a podcast this weekend and I said, I'm sorry, I can't. And they were like, well, I hope you have fun watching your team demolish my team this week. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, that's not fun.
They also have a really like hefty, I mean, everyone does at this point, right? But they have like a pretty hefty injury report, right? Like Akeem Hicks was out last game. I'm pretty sure Allen Robinson was out last game. Obviously, we talked about Justin Fields didn't play. You saw Andy Dalton. Like they are also missing like some of their best players. And of course, like a full week of practice this week could change all of that. But if you're walking into this game without your best wide receiver, your best defensive lineman, and your QB1, technically, like your chances are not that great. So I guess in light of that, of this very bad, non-competitive opponent.
You're trying to be so polite.
What do we need to see? Like, instead I'm thinking, okay, like what do I want to see from the Packers out of this game?
I think something that I've thought about with this Packers team in general is just like, not taking your foot off the gas and not getting away from what works. And this is a Bears offense that is 30th in the NFL in points for. Like they just are not putting up points. And again, a lot of that is because a lot of the things that you listed already, Justin Fields hasn't been out there. Some of their key weapons on offense haven't been out there. They lost David Montgomery for a significant amount of time. But to me, like everything kind of ties into the red zone. Packers defense and Packers offense. They need to get better on both sides of the ball in the red zone. And I think those are the kinds of things that you want to kind of work towards before you get into the playoffs and you're going up against some really damn good offenses like Kyler Murray or even Lamar Jackson coming in a couple weeks.
Some of these comments are so funny. Okay, if coach sticks to the run game, I actually agree. I know Nagler back behind the scenes agrees with that as well. Rodgers 7 TDs. I mean, I'd take that. That'd be fun. Yeah, I would like to see like cleanup, I guess, from the Packers. Like there's not much else. Obviously, like if the defense allows the Bears to put up 30 points, like that's concerning. I don't anticipate that happening, but just like stay shut down.
Right.
Maybe start working on the hands, right? Like you don't need the picks against the Bears. I think you can beat the Bears without a turnover, but like through this playoff run, and I'm thinking, I don't know if it was you and me who were talking about this or if I was talking about this with somebody else, but I was thinking about like, there's been so many comparisons between the 2010 team and this team. And I think some of them are fair and some of them are not. But I was thinking about like what made that 2010 team so special. And it was like, they just got turnovers at the right moments in the playoffs, right? Like Tramon Williams, lights on, Sam Shields, lights on. And like we've seen the secondary like get really close to being like that level of ball hockey, but it just hasn't gotten there yet. And it may never, right? Like, I think interceptions can be fickle. But I would love to see that start to form more. Like PBUs are great. I'll take a PBU any day, right? I'm not going to complain about that. But some of the like really obvious drops, they can be game changers.
Right. And like they're really close. Darnell Savage, obviously, against the Vikings, that would have kind of turned the tides in that game. Eric Stokes could have had a pick six against Matt Stafford. That would have been so much fun, especially after the Rasul Douglas pick six. Like there are drops that have just hit these guys in the hands. And it happens, especially when you're like awkwardly kind of putting yourself in a position to make a play on the ball. But Yeah. I think a lot of that stuff is coming too, especially, I love watching Lamar Jackson play football, but when he threw 4 interceptions against the Browns and still won a couple weeks ago on Sunday Night Football, it was like, okay, like a lot of teams are starting to look more human as they get towards
Yeah.
the end of the season. And I think that's kind of what makes this Packers team so interesting is because they're having really good performances against really good football teams and they're getting their best players back. Like they're starting to become more superhuman in a way, while some of these other teams are starting to look more normal, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, but I also, now that you say it, I'm thinking like the Packers are also look human, right? Like I can pick out plenty of places where they need to get better. They just win. They just continue to win and just like put up more dominant performances than their opponents, which I don't know. I don't know. Like last year they felt so perfect. It was almost like too perfect. Whereas like this season, it's not like they haven't faced any adversity and they're still finding ways to win. I think it's like a better formula almost.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Does that make sense?
because last season it was like, okay, well, our offense can put up 40 points in any given moment, and the defense is going to bend, don't break you all the way to the end zone, and then like in opportune moments, give up the big play or the big, number of points. Whereas this season, it's like you said, they've won different ways. They've pitched a shutout and only put up 17 points on offense against Seattle, or they've had to go into games that were shootouts and they've come out on top of those. I think the only way we haven't seen them win, maybe not. Maybe the Bengals. I was going to say I haven't pulled out a W on special teams yet, but they did technically
I
in
guess,
Cincinnati.
yeah.
A little help from the wind and McPherson from the Bengals. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I do agree with you though that they're, some games they're really run heavy with AJ Dillon. Some games, Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers just look superhuman together. But is there a team, I guess, here's a question for you in the NFC that you think is more complete at this point specifically in the season than the Packers?
More complete?
Yeah, like if we're going to talk about superhuman teams, who would be the team in the NFC?
I think the Cardinals are
You do.
Just as good as the Packers.
You think maybe they're ...
Like I think like playing the Cardinals when both teams are at full strength is a coin flip. And I don't, I stand by that statement. Like the Cardinals are a very good team with a very good defense. And I think when all is said and done, I don't know. I would like to see, it would be interesting to see the Packers come play the Cardinals team like with Z, Ja, and everybody back from injury. I actually think maybe the Packers could be a better team, but also it depends on how I don't know. Now I'm getting into it. To answer your question, I think it's the Cardinals. The Buccaneers are almost there, but they've just got so many injuries on defense right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you take the super chat.
Okay, super chat. Lou Malnati. Oh, that's funny. Haha. Is there any off-season or mid-season signing that compares with even one of Boxy or Jair coming off IR? You like my nails? Thank you. You mean a signing that the Packers have already made or one they could make?
That's a good question. Let's do both.
Okay, I think Devondre Campbell.
Or Rasul Douglas.
Unbelievably. I don't know. I think I'd still rather have Jair out there. Like, not that Rasul hasn't been incredible, but I think Devondre Campbell has been, there is no comparison for what he's brought
the question.
To that, to the middle of the defense. If there's one that they could have made that would make, Oh, you mean from another team's made in the NFL. Oh, interesting. Like another free agent signing elsewhere that would have been better than getting Boxy or Jair back. No. I mean, those are 3 like all pro level players. I don't know. I mean, Von Miller maybe would have been my comparison, but at the same time, he doesn't look like the Von Miller he used to be.
Well, I was going to say, is it recency bias to say I'd rather have Zadarius Smith back with Joe Barry in this defense than have Von Miller, come in and Z not back the rest of the season? Like, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather keep Z and Preston and Rashawn together, given what we've seen from them already the last couple seasons.
Yeah. Free agent signing. I mean, I'm still sad about Stephon Gilmore, but ignore me.
But Perri, we wouldn't have Rasul if we had Stephon.
Rasul's playing great, and now it just doesn't matter. And Stephon Gilmore just got hurt again.
That's true. That's a bummer.
another super chat. Thank you, Jason. Jason asks, when we win the Super Bowl this year, love your attitude, we need to bring back the tradition of raising the coach on the player's shoulders. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think if this happens this season, like LaFleur deserves that and more. I think he already deserves Coach of the Year.
Yes.
He's just blatantly the best coach in the league. Bill, I can understand an argument for Bill Belichick. I think actually that's more of executive of the year, but yeah. To answer your question, yes, let's raise the coach on the shoulders.
Yeah, David Bakhtiari is going to hoist him up like the Jerry Kramer, Vince Lombardi picture. And I also picture, like, I imagine Elton Jenkins and Robert Tunyon would be there with their little boots on or whatever, their knee braces, also hoisting him. He's going to have a street named after him, I'm sure, before this is all said and done.
I also picture this, and I think I've thought about this. I think since the Chiefs won the Super Bowl 2 seasons ago, all I can think about is how much I want David Bakhtiari to chug a beer off the Lombardi Trophy.
I would like to do that personally.
Did that, and like that's all I want. I think I'm almost positive I have a bookmark of him quote tweeting that video saying, "I want to do this." Like I'm almost positive I bookmarked that.
I want to watch him do that, and I also want to do that. So,
okay, so we've got some time. I know we were going to talk about the Bears.
We did. There's nothing to talk about. They're bad.
Is that too? I don't know. Is that unfair? Like, should we talk about the Bears' defense? Because the offense is bad. Like, there's nothing to say about the offense. Andy Dalton or Justin Fields, bad. I mean, Justin Fields gets pressured on like 40% of his dropbacks, and I think this pass rush is going to eat him alive if he plays. If he doesn't play and it's Andy Dalton, like, he's not great. He's just, like, not a good quarterback. So it's really the defense, I guess.
It is, but they're still, bottom half of the league in points against. Roquan Smith is hurt, Khalil Mack is hurt, Akeem Hicks is hurt. It just feels like I think those could be their three best players on defense, unless you maybe want to include Eddie Jackson in that. But, all of their key pieces are injured, and it's just hard to see them coming into Lambeau on Sunday Night Football in the capacity that they are against a Packers team that could clinch the division if the Vikings lose. If the Vikings lose, the Packers know that they could get t-shirts and hats on Sunday Night Football. Remember when Z, his first year with the Packers, he said, all I want for Christmas is a hat and a t-shirt. Like that kind of energy to me. Just like,
yeah. I mean, this is also like love a good Adrian Amos revenge game.
Yes.
Okay, so then let's get fun then. I feel like
let's get fun. We are
let's
fun.
get fun.
You don't think we're fun and you don't think we have friends. That's what I've learned.
Let's get more fun.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna ask you about like position groups. I don't know how to phrase this question. This is why we're live, because I get to talk out loud. I was gonna ask like strongest position groups that you think the Packers have through this season, like where their strengths are, I guess.
Like, you mean position groups like which player is a strength, or just like where the strengths of the team are in general?
I guess strengths of the team, like position groups as a whole, not like one player carries a position group. Like I still think like, yeah, Devondre Campbell is wonderful. Chris Barnes has up and down moments. I wouldn't say the strength of this Packers defense is their inside linebacker grouping. But like, to me, I think a strength of this defense is their safeties, right?
See, so that's really interesting to me, because I agree that the safeties, like if you're talking about top two, like Savage and Amos, I loved Henry Black to start the season. I thought he was always in the right place at the right time, but towards, as the season has kind of progressed, I'm maybe more so concerned about that third safety spot than I had been. You'd want to say corner is a strength, given the way that Eric Stokes and Rasul Douglas have been playing as of late, but I don't know if you can call it a strength long term. To me, I guess when you initially kind of posed the question, is edge rush. It's Preston Smith is having, I know he had like 8 or 9 sacks in his first season with the Packers, but the way that he's disrupting the game, even if it's not kind of adding up on the stat sheet as far as sacks, the pressure he's getting opposite Rashawn Gary makes me think that, when they get Zadarius Smith back, that edge unit is going to be just insane. especially when you think about, and I know, thankfully it wasn't one of the premier guys, Rashawn technically with his elbow brace, but they don't have much contribution from their like third or fourth edge rushers right now. Jonathan Garvin was on the COVID list. Tipa has kind of filled in, and it's just
Yeah. I think where they're getting their contributions is from Kenny and Dean.
okay. So you think it's the D line?
Well, I think I don't know. I guess I think of them as a one grouping, which I shouldn't.
As
I
a
mean, this
front
is abstract.
seven?
We're making our own rules here.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, the D line, like, I think you're absolutely correct that like Rashawn and Preston together can just like wreck games, just the two of them. But I think it cannot be like overstated enough, like how much Kenny and Dean this season have impacted like their ability to get one-on-ones or get mismatches or get back, and disrupt the pocket and get to the quarterback. I think it all goes together.
Well, and I think what's so like kind of crazy about the defensive line specifically is like going into the season, yes, they drafted TJ Slayton, but he was a late round pick. We weren't sure kind of what Kingsley Keke would look like, and he unfortunately had another concussion, which is concerning given he had one last season. And Tyler Lancaster, you're like, okay, the D line is just not a position of strength for this team. It could be one of the glaring weaknesses, especially because we have Raheem Mostert in our brains still from 2019 and the way that teams used to be able to run on this defense. And still, going into week 14 now, the Packers defense hasn't allowed a 100-yard rusher. So I think, you talk about a quick turnaround for a team, and whether that's Joe Barry or okay. Speak on it, Perri. Speak on Joe Barry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think like the way the defense like is playing speaks for itself. I feel like we've talked about this like ad nauseum, so this is probably like a repeat of what others have heard me say already. But you bring in a new coach who has like all the exact same pieces as he did as the previous coach. And the question was, can he do something different with his unit? And like the answer is yes, right? Simply yes. Joe Barry has made this unit a much better defense than it has been in a long time. And sure, like you can point to a couple of new additions that Goot has found off the street and the practice squad. But I think at the end of the day, the credit goes to Joe Barry for doing what he's done with the players that he has.
Well, I think, I think about this a lot, actually. Like, would Mike Pettin have found success in the middle of the defense if he had Devondre Campbell last season? But then you're talking about Joe Barry playing most of the season or coaching most of the season without Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith, right? Like, for as much as we could say, like, well, he's gotten a couple pieces that Mike Pettin didn't have, he lost his two All-Pros.
Yeah, true.
And he's still
yes.
like...
yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I went first
go.
for defense. What do you got on offense? Your position of strength.
Running back?
Same. Okay. We're in agreement.
That's just, I mean, I know that like running back and the run game can be like a very boring topic for a lot of people. Like everyone wants high flying, Jamar Chase 75-yard touchdowns. But like when Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are on the field together, like there's actually nothing that makes me happier, because that is two dynamic playmakers on the field at the same time who can not just run the ball well in the position that they were drafted to, but catch passes out wide, out of the backfield, and around. Like they can literally do everything. And we've seen it for a couple of times with Aaron Jones previously, where you like get Aaron Jones on linebacker and that's a win. But like now you add in another running back who can do the same thing and like truck through you and fall forward and have 8 yards. Just really tough to beat them.
Yeah, I'm with you. Sorry, I'm trying to get Bojack to come on screen. He doesn't want to, but he just wants to run up and down the stairs while we're recording. So, whatever you gotta do, man. It's 5 degrees outside in Wisconsin. We get it. But yeah, I mean, I think, and the way that the running backs have been performing with a beat up offensive line too. Like we're thinking, of course, David Bakhtiari comes back. That's going to make a difference. Hopefully Josh Myers comes back. He seems kind of like the one piece that we haven't heard much from yet. We're hearing about Jair and Z and David Bakhtiari. Hopefully Josh Myers is able to return at some point. And I'm curious too to hear about Randall Cobb tomorrow. We're hoping to hear some injury reports, but sometimes I feel like I forgot that he missed half the game against the Rams because he had such a good first half.
I know. He really did. He was on fire. True number 2 slot receiver that this offense has been missing. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can add quarterback in there, right? Like Aaron Rodgers hasn't looked the same as his MVP season, but he's still like I trust him trotting out there more than like 30 other quarterbacks in the league.
And I mean, he's still what, like plus 600 to win MVP. So if
Yeah,
you look at
that blows my mind a little bit.
it's kind of a weird year for quarterbacks. Like, there were some that looked unstoppable to start the season. Patrick Mahomes is looking more like Patrick Mahomes. Thought Josh Allen had an early shot and he hasn't looked that great. It's potential it's Tom Brady, which is just enough of Tom Brady, but
Thanks, Larry, for the super chat.
yeah, thanks, Larry. Does anybody have questions in the chat? I did see Big B ask if I have my Zedarius Smith candle, and you actually, if you look really closely, can see it right above my finger. It's just not up close to the camera, but he is still there.
Oh, Joey asked a very good question also that I want to go back to.
Okay.
He said, a player that we think could step up down the stretch, i.e., we're going with 2010 comparisons tonight, i.e., James Starks.
James Starks is one of my dad's all-time favorite players, so I love getting to talk about James Starks, but that's a really good question. Josiah Aguara, I think, is going to be mine.
Okay, I like this. Expand.
Because, we thought Robert Tonyan was going to have a huge role, and he, I think, was asked to do a lot of things that we didn't see him doing in 2020. There was a lot of chip blocking. He had to kind of help as the sixth offensive lineman at times, and it just, obviously, when you put up 11 touchdowns in a season, the expectation is that you're going to go have that same kind of contribution the next season. So he gets hurt. Big Dog, as much as I love him and his contributions to the offense, is not going to be that field stretching weapon that maybe he was earlier in his career. So to me, I think Josiah Aguara is like one of those fun wrinkles that we're starting to see. He had, his first career touchdown. He had a nice, I think it was a 4th down conversion or 3rd down conversion against the Rams in the middle of the field. So I think he's starting to earn the trust of Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, God, Matt LaFleur, I think, gushed over him more than most players that the Packers have drafted. So to me, yeah, I think we're going to see his role expand through the regular season and in the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Matt Ramage. We love having you here. Appreciate you. Yeah, I have a couple in mind. I'm trying to decide who I want to talk about.
Give me one on offense, and then we can maybe switch to defense.
Okay, perfect. There's so many. I kind of want to go with John Runyon Jr., and I know that sounds like a weird thing, like step up, but the line's been really rough, and the shuffling around has been I think it's exploited weaknesses, right, with a couple of other players, and the only player that hasn't like given up a sack on Aaron Rodgers or given up any like significant pressure has been JRJ. And I just think that like when you're fighting for a spot and you play like the way he has, you get to keep that spot even when your starters come back. And we just talked about the run game, and like the interior offensive line is huge for the run game. And so when you're playing like he is, I think you impact the game highly.
Well, I think that's super interesting too, because we had speculated so much about what's going to happen when Elton Jenkins has to slide in and David Bakhtiari fills in at left tackle. And now, unfortunately, we're not going to know the answer to that. But, it's interesting because we watched so much of the preseason and we were at training camp, and Royce Newman was like a shot in the dark at, right guard. He all of a sudden was listed as the starter, and we're like, wait, what? It was between Lucas Patrick and JRJ all season. So I would have been curious to see kind of what that initial interior of the offensive line looked like if you had a healthy Elton Jenkins coming back to that. But who do you got on defense?
Oh, there's so many guys. I think the obvious one can be like Rashawn, right? He just like continues the path that he's going down. I kind of want to say Stokes though. And I say that not, again, I am thrilled to have Rasul Douglas. And I think that he has been absolutely an upgrade from Kevin King. There's no question about that. But he's not Jair. And like you're seeing Stokes start to turn it on, but you're also seeing Stokes struggling because he's having to go up against number ones. And so when you get Jair back to take away some of that from Stokes, like I think he's going to end up being really, really impactful. Now, obviously, he's going to have to start, tracking the ball a little bit better, but you're also seeing him start to make or have the potential, I guess, to make big plays. Like you said, he almost had a pick six again against Stafford. I think he just saw the end zone before he had the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
But I just think Jair coming back with him, even if Ja plays like in the slot, like we want him to a little bit, it's just going to give Stokes even more opportunities.
Yeah, so for mine, I think I'm gonna pick TJ Slayton, and maybe it is my bias for, the big guy behind me, BJ Raji, but
We're predictable.
I am nothing if not predictable, Perri Goldstein. But no, I mean, I think it was Ben Fennell on Twitter had posted that Kenny Clark and TJ Slayton were just destroying offensive lines together. And when I think about the Packers Super Bowl run, I think Spillet Pickett is one of the most vivid memories that I have. So what if in the NFC Championship game, or Mark, she has a type, swear to God, or in the Super Bowl, if we see number 52, but this time it's Rashawn Gary yelling Spillet Slayton, and then TJ Slayton forces a fumble in a key moment. And I mean, I think we just talked about the defensive line and the contributions that we're seeing from a number of different guys. I think Dean Lowry falls in the same category, but kind of the push we're seeing where Kenny Clark doesn't have to be the only guy on that D-line. That's where I think they'll make a huge impact down the stretch.
Love it. Let's have it all happen. Before we wrap things up, I just want to briefly mention that Cheesehead TV is starting to campaign for Feeding America in Eastern Wisconsin. And it's an amazing organization, amazing cause. We actually learned recently, thank you, Tyler, for your very informative video, that 1 in 8 people in Eastern Wisconsin experience hunger. And even just $1 to Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin can provide 4 meals to any one neighbor in need. So there's 2 really easy ways to donate if you want to help everyone out. You can donate online in the link provided in the description of this video. It's in the video description on YouTube, or simply text Cheesehead to 41444. Cheesehead's all one word. There's campaign shirts, hoodies that you can buy. 100% of proceeds are going to go to Feeding America Eastern Wisconsin. So if you do buy a shirt, that's 40 meals. So you would be an amazing person and you'd get some merch. But just want to plug that as something Cheesehead TV is doing right now for the holidays.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because I literally had it up on my screen. I was ready to go. So
I was trying to find a moment, that was slided in there for everyone. Let's see what's going on in the comments. Well, everyone's got such fun commentary today. Love that we can spark.
They were funny comments.
Interesting dialogue about the Packers. Anything else you have on your mind before we wrap this up?
Give me a final score. We didn't do that yet. Final score for Packers Bears.
35-14.
Okay, because mine was 35-17. So there you go.
Okay. Yeah.
17 feels generous, but I don't know.
I'm
in the Christmas spirit, right? I'm in this the season of giving.
Okay, great. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. We're going to actually turn this into our podcast episode. So if you were late, if you're just joining us, if you're watching the replay on YouTube for whatever reason and you're hearing this and you got to go and you want to plug in your headphones, it will be our podcast instead of our Bears preview, since there's not really that much to talk about for the Bears. We will be back on Monday for our typical Twitch, Twitter recap shows, hopefully Victory Monday. For those folks who are just joining us, that's what we call most every Mondays during the Packers football season. And really looking forward to Bears game, Sunday Night Football, Packers in primetime. We love it. Thank you all for joining us so very much. We appreciate you as always. Go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.